prior to commencing, I would like to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for dedicating your time to participate in this webinar. I'm confident that this session will provide you the ample insight and comprehensive information. Okay, you might be wondering what is the topic today, connect without connect, and what does that mean? So let me elaborate it a little more. So basically, it is a connect XM Cloud to Sitecore search, and that is without Sitecore Connect. I think now it is little clearer, but not elaborative, right? Don't worry, we will uncover further details during the session itself. For those who are unfamiliar with my background, allow me to provide a brief introduction of myself. I'm Arvind Gehlot, having over 17 years of extensive experience within the IT industry, and now I'm currently located in Minnesota, United States. Over the course of my professional journey, I have undertaken various roles, starting from developers, progressing to a project manager, and ultimately evolving into a solution architect, or we can say technology enthusiast. Beyond my professional pursuit, I am a technical blogger, and presently I serve as a senior technology lead at Horizontal Digital USA. Here are the channels you can reach out to me: Slack, LinkedIn, Twitter, known as X, and you can also find my repositories on GitHub and few code snippets on GitGist. Okay, let's start with the topic today and agenda for the session and what we would like to cover out of it. So these are the topics I would like to cover in today's session, starting with why are we here today? The use case, where we'll discuss the applicability and need, then the problem statement, and how XM Cloud works in a nutshell, how search crawler works, very brief summary about Sitecore Connect, and Sitecore Experience Age with webhook, then how would our solution look like. After that, we'll have a Q&A session, and then the final thanks note. I would like, I would try my best to be really quick and cover as much as possible in less time. So let's begin. Uh, just a second. Yeah. So in this world of Sitecore content management, the efficient indexing of Sitecore content item poses a common challenge for the developers and administrator. And this makes more sense when you are living in the composable world and working with bunch of different products. While working on real life project, you get different scenarios and use cases that you might not be thinking, and there might not be some easier way to get that done. I encountered similar use case that I thought should have been easier to implement and fix, and there should be some better way to implement, but unfortunately, uh, there is not at the moment. So let me explain the use case first, and later we'll go into a little more deeper on that. So uh, we have Sitecore items and with some attributes, but what make it different scenario that these items has no layouts means there are those items are without their presentation details. Those items are not associated to any page, and even those items are not part of data sources. It means there are no way for the page to render it. So these items are basically to hold some additional metadata about some PDF documents like brand, categories, subcategories, business units. So those are some metadata, and uh, items need that document, and that item has some metadata attributes about that document. Now we want to index all these documents along with their metadata attributes into Sitecore search for better discovery. and user search and filter experiences. You might already have gone through my some of my previous articles on Sitecore Search and various ways to ingest data into Sitecore Search. And you may ask, this can be simply done using Sitecore Search Crawler. Then how this topic is different and why we are talking about Sitecore Search here. Let's go more deeper on the use case to understand it better. Currently, those items are exposed to a page using API to make it available to download for the public user, but that API is hosted on the Sitecore CD server. Earlier, I'm talking about XP Word, where you can host your APIs. Excuse me. You can host your APIs on CD servers. The API is being consumed on those pages with the AJAX, and it also has some filters and metadata attributes that we discussed earlier. So what is the issue and what is the problem? Let me continue. Today, we are in XM Cloud headless world where we don't have CD server concept anymore. It means we don't have Sitecore contextual API hosting. Currently, we can host any APIs or any other hosting platform on any other hosting platform, but will not be able to get Sitecore context there to get only specific item that we are interested in. Now, the problem is how to index that content into Sitecore search in absence of that API, right? We cannot host that API. So what are the other ways to ingest those items that are not publicly available, but we still want to push that data into Sitecore search? So what is the best way? Recognizing the absence of a streamlined solution, this session unveil a meticulously drafted approach to uncover the complexities associated with it and indexing non-layout items. So currently there are no straightforward way to achieve this. So we have to work on multiple stuff to solve the problem. If you are already aware of how headless CMS works, and to be very specific, how Sitecore headless CMS solution with XM Cloud works, then we must be having an idea the overall architecture and how request processing is done. By looking at this architectural diagram, uh, we know content delivery is provided by Edge. It delivers content and designed information headlessly through GraphQL and GraphQL endpoint and can be consumed by any head technologies such as Next.js, ASP.NET Core, Angular, Vue, and React. In that case, we need to do something with Experience Age itself to pull a request content item and push it to the Sitecore search. Yes, that is true, but it is not that simple as you might be thinking. Here is the diagram. We can see that XM Cloud publishes the content in Experience Age, and then Sitecore Search can crawl the content that are publicly available, in this case, HTML pages, and it can also crawl the content from the API as well. Now, back to our use case. Those APIs are not available publicly on page. So how those behind the scene content can be pushed into the Sitecore search? And that was our basic question. So the easiest possible way could be using Sitecore search, using Sitecore Connect. So what is Sitecore Connect? Sitecore Connect is a low code, no code integration platform built on Workato. This platform enable your organization to connect Sitecore product with the rest of your tech stack with ease. With Sitecore Connect, it is easy to build complex workflow across the marketing and customer experience ecosystem without paying for costly custom integration. The connector can pull the data from Experience Age and push it into the Sitecore search. However, this problem is this platform is not free. It has a cost associated with it, and every client might not be very interested in this platform, especially when they don't have the complex ecosystem that they need to integrate to each other and to talk to each other. And this is the same case in our use case, where we can't go with Sitecore Connect just to solve one problem. So Sitecore Connect route is the Sitecore Connect route is not acceptable to our client, and we have to go through other solutions. Now, I hope you have the better understanding of the topic today. So let's see what is how we can solve the problem. So we are trying to connect Sitecore XM Cloud to Sitecore Search without the Sitecore Connect platform. So it is now very clear, right? Earlier it was the topic or the title of the topic was a little confusing, but I think now it is pretty clear that connecting XM Cloud to Sitecore Search without Sitecore Connect. So uh, what should be our solution and how solution approach looks like? So creating production ready code involves adhering to a coding standard, ensuring code quality through meaningful names and modular design, implementing comprehensive testing, including unit testing, integration testing, automated testing, various form of testing, handling error gracefully, optimizing performance and scalability. Uh, we are not going to cover everything here, but we need to ensure that we have enough think through to it and propose a solid solution. I did spend time on building a flow diagram to solve this business problem, and I would really like to discuss with the importance of each and every element to achieve our goal. I would be more focusing on pushing item content from XM Cloud to Sitecore Search using Sitecore Search Integration API rather than simple content crawling using Sitecore Web Crawler that I already discussed previously. So to summarize, how did we achieve this? Here is the flow diagram covering each element and the system with their specific role. So we have XM Cloud where content is being managed, then Experience Edge where published content are persisted, then we have Webhook to get notification of availability of new or modified content. Then we have Message Queue to store all item references for further processing. Then we have custom services that dequeue the message from queue, transform it, polish it, and restructure it for further processing. Then finally, push the content to Sitecore Search using ingestion API. So let's talk about each of these systems and their role to solve the problem. We understood that all data would be made available through Experience Edge only. That means we need to query Edge to get all those items that we are interested in to process it further and push it to the Sitecore Search. We can simply make that query something like above. If we want to query the pages having layout details, we can use the layout query, which is the upper side of the image. And if we want to query item without layout details, which is our case, we need to use the item query, which is displayed on the lower side of the image. So we have two types of query here, layout query and the item query. Layout query when we can use when we have the presentation details for the page, but all those pages that don't have the presentation details, then we need to use the item query, which is down into the image. But in this, we need to know the individual item ID to trigger the query against. So how to get all those item IDs, right? If you go previously, here we need to pass on the item ID in the item query, right? In the same way here, we have the item and we need to pass that particular item ID to fetch the item details from experience age. So what are the ways of getting it? First thing could be like apply the search query to list all items for specific template and process it. The first point again I'm saying, apply the search query to list all items for specific template and process it. And the second could be process only the item that is getting updated. The first approach is having a disadvantage that we always need to process all item every time whenever we want to refresh the content in Sitecore search, which is obviously not a good solution or good approach. So let's focus on the second approach. With the second, we need to know what are the items that are getting updated so that that can be refreshed only those items, so that we can refresh only those items into the Sitecore search. When we are talking about these approaches, some questions pop up into my mind, and the question is how to get only the item that are getting updated or modified. Well, answer is pretty simple, using experience age webhook. Here we are talking about experience age webhook and not XM Cloud webhook. Now you may ask another question, what is the experience age webhook and how it is different from regular XM Cloud webhook? Here we are talking about two webhooks. One is the experience age webhook and another one is XM Cloud webhook. I think we all know very well that in XM Cloud webhook, what is the XM Cloud webhook. So let's understand the XM Cloud XM webhook first. To make it simple, we'll not go much deeper into the topic, but simply differentiate at very high level. So for Sitecore developers, a good analogy for XM Cloud webhook is that they are remote events, just a regular Sitecore event that allow custom functionality to be triggered when an item is saved, or remote events allow code to execute on a separate machine. So it just trigger that event into the endpoint that is provided in the webhook section. With webhook, these events can be broadcast to third-party services and integration platforms like Sitecore Connect or your custom APIs. This webhook allow the CMS to automatically make an HTTP request uh, to endpoint you own each time that event is triggered, and the body of that request contains a description of event which occurred. But on the other hand, we have if your architecture relies on experience age, then the only way to do something useful after a publish is via experience age webhook. So XM Cloud webhook, when you are playing with the item within the XM Cloud environment itself, but after publishing, we don't have that control, right? Item is already published to experience age. So making a query or consuming the webhook from XM Cloud is not relevant. So now what we need to do is we need to do something with the experience age only. So these the experience age webhook are triggered when publishing is complete and can inform other client. It can inform the other client or applications that content has been updated. They have two execution mode as we discussed, on and the default option, which tells you that the publish has been completed, but don't provide any contextual information into that. The second thing is on update, which is more powerful mode. Experience Age has no interface or admin portals. All configuration is done via HTTP requests. I recommend getting familiar with the admin APIs and organizing a collection in the Postman. The admin APIs are a REST APIs that enable you to administer your experience age for XM tenant. As I can say, as I already mentioned, we don't have any interface where you can monitor and you can trigger these experience age admin APIs. You have to use Postman or some other clients to execute those admin APIs. And these are the list of endpoints that you can see. You can trigger these APIs using any client interface. So you can see that we have the clear cache for tenant, delete content, get settings, and down there we have the create webhook and update webhook and the list of webhook as well. So these are the main APIs that we will be going to use in this session. But to trigger these APIs, you must need to pass the bearer token in authorization request header. You can see here. So we need to pass that bearer token. But another question is where to get these bearer token? And the answer is XM Cloud Deploy app. From the XM Cloud Deploy app, not the portal, but Deploy app. We can create a new token from Sitecore Deploy app itself, create a new credential from Deploy app and select age administration like this screenshot. So if you can see from the Deploy app, the third option is credentials. We can go to the credentials and then we can select for the environments tab on the top, and then we can create a age administration. We can create a new credentials, and this time we'll use age administration, not the automation from the drop down. Okay, once it is created, just copy the generated token and paste it in your webhook admin API request header in the authorization bearer or authorization header. Make sure you prefixed the token with bearer in the value. If you can see that we have in authorization, we have just bearer, and whatever the value you are getting for that token, you just need to paste it after the bearer. And the body section, add these lines. We need this body section while creating a webhook in the experience age. Next thing is you need a webhook endpoint. If you don't have right now, it's okay. We can generate a new test webhook endpoint simply visiting one online page which is available like webhook.site. If you're not very familiar with it, you can just visit it, webhook.site. You can create a new webhook endpoint and you can use that. But you may need to create your own webhook endpoint to continue with our use case. Now, whenever you make any change into the XM Cloud item and publish that item to Edge, it will trigger the configured webhook and pass on the entire payload, something like this. If you can just pay attention here, uh, this is the payload that we will be receiving at the webhook uh, uh, handling application. Here we can see that we have the identifier, we have the entity definition, and we have the operation. Uh, but the thing is, we are not done yet. It is just an endpoint that we are getting, but there are some problems with it. So we come across another problem with a new and the bigger challenge, and let's uncover that challenge in a little more details. So here, just pay attention here that this is the payload and what are the missing stuff we'll be discussing in the next slide. The payload we are receiving from Experience Edge is not telling us the item template, that it belongs to. If you can see here, you don't see any template ID, right? So you see all the identifiers or the item ID and the operation it has. I mean, it is getting updated or deleted, and the item entity definition. It is saying that whether it is a layout data or item data. That's it. We have only this information. We don't have template here. So the situation would be up to the next level when authoring publishes all item with republish option rather than smart publish. we'll end up having a huge list of items to query back to fetch the item template to apply the filter along with other metadata attributes that we want to push to Sitecore search. And to mitigate this, we need to make another call to experience age uh, with each ID to get the additional detail to process it further, right? Because we don't have the template anymore, template ID anymore. So what we need to do is we need to process each and every individual item that was a part of republish operation. And we may get a huge number of IDs from the edge webhook payload, and calling edge API for those IDs might take considerable amount of time for execution, right? If we do this all in single webhook endpoint, it may get timed out. Thus, we had to introduce a message queue in between. So I hope you understand the situation. Suppose user publishes or republishes entire content tree, then we'll get more than 20,000 items. It could probably possible that we'll get more than 20,000, 10,000 items in the webhook. And if we process each item one by one, then definitely webhook will get timed out. So we have to solve the problem. So how can we solve the problem? In our use case, we'll store all the incoming webhook payload in some form of message queue and release the sender without blocking for the further processing. The consumer application in our case, it would be custom API will dequeue the message that is will dequeue the message, and then we can process it further. So what we'll do, whatever we are getting as a payload, incoming payload from webhook, will store it into the message queue and then release the webhook so that we are not getting timed out issue. And then our custom service API will dequeue the message from this queue and process it further. So I hope it is clear. Okay, so once we have the entire data set in our message queue, we need to perform following steps for further processing. Dequeue the incoming webhook payload, as I mentioned. Apply the initial filter to limit the item to be processed, like only item or only layout or both. In our case, it would be items. Query the experience age again for each item to get required metadata attributes and its template. When we have entire data set at our side, apply filter on the specific template to limit the processing, because we are interested on only few of the items that belongs to a specific template. Then polish or format the data and define the outgoing schema that Sitecore Search Ingestion API. We cannot pass it as we are receiving from the payload. We need to transform it into some of the other format that Sitecore Ingestion API understand. Then we'll use Ingestion API to push these individual items with defined schema to Sitecore Search for indexing and return the item status summary for the processing. So currently, a Sitecore Search Ingestion API only support one document at a time and don't accept batch document. But we received all those items in a batch, but we cannot pass entire batch in one go to Sitecore Ingestion API, because Sitecore Ingestion API is expecting one document at a time. So what we need to do, after filtration on the template ID, if we are having 200 items to be processed and to be pushed into Sitecore search, we need to process all those 200 items in one by one. We can call this ingestion API one by one for each and every item that we received. And to push individual item, we can use the put method that you can see onto the screenshot, and call the endpoint with required authorization header. Get the value from push API source of Sitecore search platform and pass the body as follows. So uh, the value that you can see in the authorization here, that you can get it from Sitecore Search itself when you are creating a push API source. As soon as you create that source, you'll get that ID, and the same ID you need to pass with each and every call. Finally, when items are formatted into the schema that Sitecore Search understand, like in this image, we can pass on the payload to the ingestion API. This is the sample payload format that Sitecore Search is expecting to index the content. So if you can see that at the top, root element is document. Under that, we need to define the ID of that document and all those fields that we want to push to the Sitecore Search. We just need to make sure that these fields are readily available in Sitecore Search, because it is mapping exactly the same fields into Sitecore Search, and if those are matching, only then the value will be populated. And that is it. You should be able to see the new document in Sitecore Search platform after a couple of seconds or minutes. Because it is again, this request puts the item into the Sitecore Search queue, and then when queue executes, it will start creating those documents into the Sitecore Search platform. Uh, we are done with our use case that we discussed early in the session. The process make sure that we get all those XM Cloud items into Sitecore Search on publishing. While working on this use case, I identified many touch points where I think improvement is required, and that would be great if we can see those improvements in form of features in next upcoming Sitecore Search releases or Sitecore XM Cloud releases, covering all those Sitecore composable products. Some of those improvements are listed here. So these are the improvements that we need. If we have these features already available in these composable products, probably we could not uh, go this much of detail and custom implementation. If you can see throughout the session, it was all custom implementation. But if these features are readily available into these products, we would have not been gone through in this much of detail, and we could avoid a huge amount of implementation cost for the client. So for the XM Cloud, what we need, native integration of XM Cloud to Sitecore Search for content crawling. Currently, there is no native integration between XM Cloud and XM Sitecore Search. If we would have, probably we don't need to worry about all these custom implementation. Sorry. For experience age, webhook and its payload customization. If you can see, we had a webhook payload which is very strict, right? And we cannot modify it. We have no way to customize the payload. If we would have that capability, we could simply introduce template ID, and we can simply ignore all those query back to back to the GraphQL to get the template ID for individual items. And the second is payload has very limited details and don't have the other important fields like template ID to apply filter upon. So these two things, if we could do on experience age, our use case could have very simple. And the third one is for Sitecore Search, where Sitecore ingestion, search ingestion API to support batch processing that I mentioned. Currently, it is not supported. We have to trigger the same endpoint again and again for each individual item or each individual document. Again, then there is no logging and analytics reporting for ingestion API for now. We have the web crawler logging where we can see that, okay, where it is getting failed, if something is getting failed, what document is getting failed. But similar kind of stuff is not available for Sitecore Push API or Sitecore Ingestion API. So if we have that, probably we'll be in better situation to diagnose the problem. And the third one is Sitecore Ingestion API is expecting a strict payload to be processed at the search platform. There is no way search platform itself process each incoming webhook payload and allow the search administrator to map incoming fields to Sitecore search attributes. I'm not very sure whether we all are having experience on Coveo, but in Coveo, we can, I think, I don't 100% sure, but while I was working previously with the Coveo, we were able to map incoming fields into the Coveo fields, where we don't need to we don't need to transform the incoming request to push the content into Coveo. But here in Sitecore Search, that strict schema that we have to follow, and that mapping has to be done outside Sitecore Search. So I would suggest if we can have these improvements over the composable products, Sitecore composable products, will be in better situation. Time for question and answer. Anybody having any question, I would happy to answer. I hope it is in depth, in detail, and you understood